This is the Next Bite of Life podcast, the place to be to hear personal stories from expats, digital nomads, and everybody else taking their next bite of life. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Next Bite of Life podcast. My name is Kem Kem. Today, my guest is Brittnay, and she's going to tell us all about pet sitting and house sitting across the world. Thank you for being here. Now, I know that we have little time, so I'm going to try and go through this as quickly as I can. Now, Brittnay, for a lot of people that don't know what house sitting and what pet sitting is all about, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yep. So just the basis of it is caring for someone's pets while they're away. It could be they're away for work, for a vacation. There might be an expat heading home for a few months. And we find it's not just pet sitting. Sometimes it could be house sitting. A lot of homeowners we find have a second home somewhere and they want someone in the home for security or to look after their garden or pool. So it kind of every single house sit is different.
Wow, that sounds great though. So I know that you've been doing this for quite a few years. How long exactly?
Coming up in about 5 years now. So we kind of during the main lockdown, we weren't house sitting, but other than that, the last 5 years.
Okay. Now, how did that happen to, how did you happen to get into the whole pet sitting, house sitting business? How did that happen for you?
Yep. So we were living in London at the time on our 2 year visa, and we met up with a friend, and she happened to just show up with a dog one day. We knew she didn't have a dog because she was also traveling,
Okay.
and we kind of started chatting to her about it, and she said that she was pet sitting. And at the time, we were all living in, cramped share houses in London. And she happened to be looking after this beautiful home and had an awesome dog. And she told us all about how she had started pet sitting. So we kind of looked into it for ourselves, realized that our visas were coming to an end in London. And we thought we could also kind of start house sitting as well.
Hmm. Now, was it really hard to get started? I mean, how did you get started in it?
Yep. So we kind of, and this was kind of all by accident, but we kind of started around October. I remember sending out lots and lots of applications, and because she showed us the website she was using,
Okay.
and we kind of was a bit crickets for about a month or so, and then all of a sudden we started getting all these applications accepted, and we couldn't really figure out why at first, but then we realized we're coming up to the holidays,
Ah,
and it just there is pet sitters are in demand during the holidays,
okay.
and that kind of gave us that jump start.
Oh, that's good. Now, did you have your pick of places, or did you start out locally and then worked your way internationally, or was your first one just, international?
Yep. Our first one was in London, so it was actually just around the corner from our house. And the lady did actually ask, why do you want a house sit so close to your home? And we said we were looking to build our references. So when we did start traveling Europe more, we would have kind of just a little bit of a base.
Hmm. It's funny because that's what I've heard from a lot of house and pet sitters, that it's better to start locally, either with your friends or so they can give you references, or close to home so that you can build up that base. Because sometimes, people want to check up on the house sitters and just get references, and that way they can check with somebody close to them. Did you find that was the way?
Definitely. I think that that first month was tough because we didn't have the references,
Hmm.
and but kind of coming into the holidays does make it a lot easier. And when people do ask me now, how do I get started? I do always recommend asking friends or family, or kind of doing those local sits, so it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, when you go traveling, how does it happen? Do you say, I want to go to a certain place and then find house sits there? Or do you find the house sits and then kind of work your way through getting, reservations and going there? Which one comes first?
I usually decide where I want to go and then look for house sits in that location.
Hmm.
I mean, some people they're not sure where they want to go, and it can be a good way to spark a bit of inspiration because sometimes it's places you'd never think that you're gonna go or how much you would enjoy it when you once you got there.
Mm-hmm.
But I usually go on the where I want to go. I'll look for house sit. So when we wanted to do our van trip through Europe,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of knew we wanted to start in France, so I was looking for house sits around that area. And then as I knew we'd be moving on, I was looking further down the track at different places. I was looking at Italy, looking at Greece.
Wow. So you've been to over 15 countries. So you have your pick basically of where you can, sit. Now, do you find yourself having to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, this house is just not big enough for me. I'm not going to do it." Or do you just say, "Hey, this is a sit. It's kind of where I want to be." So you go for it like that?
Definitely. I don't really mind how big the house is. Sometimes bigger the house, the more work it is to keep clean.
Very true.
So it's more about location that one of my kind of prerequisites when looking at house sits, I want it to feel clean so I'm comfortable in it.
Yeah.
So I don't really need anything grand. As long as it's clean, I'm happy.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense because sometimes, I belong to a group of like sitters, that are looking for sitters. And some of those homes are just gigantic. And you just think, well, geez, if you're sitting there, you're busy cleaning up the whole place because really they're just humongous. How do you have time to like play with the dog and then do all this? I mean, I've had people say, "Oh no, that's okay. We have the gardener for this and we have the gardener for that." So you can really get some really huge mansion like houses to sit in when the owners
Oh,
go away.
definitely.
So I guess it's something else to
Definitely. There are some
consider.
huge ones.
Now, what kind of pets do you usually sit for? Do you sit for every kind of pets? Because really, people have a whole array of animals that they that they sort of the humans of. So do you do just cats and dogs, or do you do exotic animals as well?
I think the most exotic animal that I've looked after is a turtle. So I don't have any experience with snakes or anything of that nature, but I mainly do just do cats and dogs. I don't have any experience with farm animals, but I know that's a big kind of niche that's in demand.
Hmm.
But yeah, mainly just do cats and dogs.
Okay. Now, let's talk about your website because you also show people and help them along on discovering how to go about pet and house sitting. Tell us your website, the name, and what it entails, and what you can offer people.
Yep. So it's the travelinghousesitters.com and it's traveling with two L's, the Australian way to spell it. So I always get asked about that. But we had all of our friends and family asking us how to get started, and we were kind of repeating the same things over and over to people. So we thought that we would kind of put it all in one place, and we kind of wanted to also have a little bit of a showcase to put all of our references as well, so we could kind of send the homeowners somewhere to see all the reviews and references we had all in one place.
Hmm.
So on there, we just kind of have our tips for getting started. Like what I mentioned before, that if you don't have any references, you can ask friends or family, or you could use your Airbnb references, which is something we also did when we were getting started.
Okay. Now, do you find that you have to caution people? Because I know it sounds glamorous and it sounds wonderful, and you're house sitting all over the world, but do you caution people that it really takes somebody who loves animals to do this? Because I have seen where people just come in and say, "I want to be a pet sitter because I want to travel all these places." And they actually don't even mention the pet at all. It's more about like their vacation, and they think it's like a free ride to a free place.
Definitely. I think that to do house sitting, you have to love animals. I mean, there is some sort of options that there are house sits out there where it's strictly just homes, but the main jux of it is the animals. So you really have to enjoy being with them And I think that really it adds to the traveling experience when you have animals. You can head out for a walk with the dogs, and it's just such a lovely way to explore a new place, I think. So I think that you definitely have to love animals to be house sitting.
Good. And you definitely met a lot of new people, like you said. You go for a walk and you meet other people with dogs, and you get to, because sometimes traveling can be a very lonely experience. So it's kind of nice to have a dog and, get to meet the locals that way. And just, it adds to the experience of pet sitting and house sitting as a whole.
Definitely, and especially when you kind of head out and you see neighbors and they recognize the dog, and then you stop and have a chat with them and you let them know what you're doing, and they want to know about house sitting. So it's, and then you meet kind of the homeowners' friends as well. It's a great way to travel.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic because really, I mean, you don't realize just how many people have pets, and it can be a problem when you're trying to go away and make sure that they're well taken care of. You want them in good hands. And of course, they're like your kids for the most part, and they're part of the family. So you want to make sure that the person you've left in charge is actually a good person. And I think it's a good idea when they go to your website, the travelingpetsitters.com, they can see, they can put a face to the whole notion of having a stranger in their house, because really it makes you warmer, more approachable, and they can read all the experiences that you've had before and how to get in touch with you and arrange for their own pets to be taken care of.
Yeah, it's a kind of great way to just showcase all the kind of skills we have, and I think that homeowners really appreciate that as
Oh,
well.
definitely. I know I do, because when we go away, whenever somebody approaches me and they say they have a website, that's the first thing I check out. And, it just makes things a lot easier. And you feel like there's a level of relief that comes with that. And I think that's great because really, after doing this for 5 years, I mean, it shows that you're serious about what you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't last, because word gets around anyway and people will talk.
Definitely. I think that, like you said, reviews are everything, and it's kind of like the world we live in these days. No one goes anywhere without checking the Google reviews of a restaurant or a house sitter. So having those are just key to, kind of keeping this lifestyle going.
Yeah, definitely. Now, tell us some of the countries that you visited that were your favorite.
I think my favorites would have been. It sounds very Europe heavy, but my favorites were Greece, Italy, and France.
Ah,
In France, we had a beautiful home. It was amongst the vines, and the homeowner let us know that the neighbors were happy for us to walk the dogs through the vineyards every day.
wow.
And then in Greece, we had a lovely spot that it was a little seaside town just outside of Athens. So it kind of had that Greek island feel, but it was also, there was a good community there. So it wasn't just all travelers,
Yeah.
and it was lovely to meet all the neighbors.
Wow.
And then we also did one in Montenegro, and I knew nothing about Montenegro before I went, but it's an incredible place, some of the best mountains and scenery I've ever seen before.
See, it's amazing. You're like the third person I think lately that's mentioned Montenegro to me, that it's just absolutely stunning. And, just like you, it's a place that I would never even consider going to. But hearing this, it makes me want to check it out and see what it's all about. Now, when you
Definitely, I would
were,
highly recommend
yeah? Now, when you were there, how long did you stay, like in Montenegro, for instance? How long was the sit?
I think that one was for 6 weeks.
Oh,
We were looking
wow.
after two Instagram famous cats.
Wow.
So we were asked to send 3 photos a day, and these cats also like to watch YouTube. So they were an interesting bunch, those two.
That's amazing.
I never knew there was YouTube channels for cats,
I
but
didn't know
they're
that
there.
either.
Oh, it's about 8 hours of birds or fish.
I
Highly
see. Well,
thrilling.
that makes sense now. I can see how they're enthralled by that. Now,
Yep.
what are some of the other quirky things that's happened? Like, the cat that watches YouTube, for instance. Any other stories that stick out of your mind of what dogs like to do and what?
I think I have two probably, but we showed up to one house sit and we were just meant to look after a dog, and they said, "Oh, actually, sorry, we forgot to mention, but we were pet sitting our friend's turtle." And we're like, "Okay, we never looked after a turtle before, but that's fine."
Mm-hmm.
They told us what to feed it, everything, but one thing we didn't realize how fast they were. They said you can take it out of his cage a couple of times a day, put him on the floor, let him run around, and you put him on the floor and you turn around and he'd be gone. You wouldn't see him again. We're kind of hunting under chairs, couches, looking for this guy. As soon as you put him down, you had to watch him. So that was a bit of a funny one. And then we didn't realize that when we first got to our house in France, we were kind of, saying to the dog, sit, all these kind of
Yeah.
commands, and he just wasn't listening to us. And we realized that the dog didn't know English, didn't
Ah.
know commands of English. So we had to ask the homeowner kind of what they were using for the dog, and that kind of made it a bit easier for both of us.
Now, I never knew that turtles could move that fast. I mean, I just thought like if you left them there,
Me
they would
neither.
be there 20 hours from then. I guess not. So, like,
Yep, very speedy.
like what we do when we go away and we have a dog sitter, I have a little page of like the important numbers, the vet and my friend that they could call if there's a problem and things like that, how to feed the when to feed the pets and all that. Do you find that makes it a lot easier when you go places, or do you sometimes just get people go, here are the keys and we'll see you later kind of thing?
Oh, definitely not. I've got a handover document that I send. It's probably about 4 or 5 pages. It has everything from what color bins do we use and
Okay.
what days do they go out, where's the power box.
Okay.
I've collated all the questions I've had to ask over the years, and I try to send it maybe 3 or 4 days before the house sit starts.
Okay.
And that way it kind of gives the homeowner a few days to really think about everything
Yeah.
rather than getting there on the day and they go, "Oh, here's the bins."
Yeah.
They're trying to tell you all the information and they're trying to rush out the
Rush out.
door. So
Yeah.
I find it for a better handover.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. And that's such a great idea because really, I mean, when you're stressed and you're trying to go on vacation, the last thing you want to think about is like, oh yeah, what day do you have to take the trash out? And what kind of, I have like my two dogs. One can only have that one treat because she takes medicine and the other one can have whatever. So you've got to make sure that you write all this down because it's not fair for you to come in and have to figure that out either when you're coming in and other things to you've got other things to worry about like the pet itself. So I think what you
Yeah.
do with your assessment or pre-checklist, I guess you would call it.
I call it the handover because I kind of feel like they're handing over kind of all the responsibilities to me, and I want to make sure that I'm kind of fulfilling everything rather than calling them on their
Yeah.
vacation. I want to make sure I'm kind of, ticking all the
Yeah,
boxes.
good. Do you find that a lot of the homeowners expect you to like send pictures and videos? I mean, I'm sort of like the person who hands it off to the person, and for me, from that second, you as the pet sitter are now their owner. And I just want like an update once a week or something like that. But do you find that a lot of people are sort of like helicopter parents, kind of thing that expect like a video 7 times a day?
I think it's different for everybody, and that's one of the questions on the handover is how often do you want to be contacted? Would you prefer photos, videos? Because like yourself, some people they want to hear every couple of days that everything's fine,
Exactly.
and then with the cats that the Instagram famous cats, she wanted 3 to 4 photos a day of the
Oh,
cats.
wow.
So it kind of changes for everybody, and I don't mind doing the photos. I'm totally happy with that, but I kind of like to know up front exactly what you would like because I don't want to be sending you 4 to 5 photos a day if you were just expecting one a week. You might
Exactly.
be like, "Oh, she's messaging me again."
Yeah. I know because, for me, it just seems like it's sort of like that trust thing. I trust you to do the right thing for the pet. So I don't need to know, but I can understand how some people want to like see their dog or their cat or whatever, every so often. Now, has it ever come to the point where you're saying to yourself, this is just way too much? Have you ever had to refuse any seats because the conditions or, were a little bit too were more than you were willing to like cope with?
Mm-hmm. I think it's one of those learning experiences. I've got a Facebook group at the moment of house sitters, and someone mentioned the other day on there saying that they showed up to a house sit, and it wasn't clean enough for kind of for them to feel comfortable. And I said to them, it's kind of a learning experience. The same thing happened to
Mm-hmm.
me, and you kind of realize what you are and aren't comfortable
Mm-hmm.
with. And then going forward, you kind of check for those things. So I just like a nice level of cleanliness
Mm-hmm.
and feel like I can feel comfortable in the
Yeah.
space. And I have had ones before where, because I always like to do a video, if I can't be there and meet in person, I always like to do a video chat and see around the
Uh-huh.
house. And if I don't think it's somewhere that I feel comfortable living, then I will say no
Okay.
usually.
Yeah, that makes sense because sometimes, it's a trade-off. Yes, you would like to go to someplace beautiful and exotic, but if you're not going to feel comfortable in the house that you're in, then it doesn't really make any sense. You don't want to spend all your time trying to like change the house, which wouldn't be nice for the homeowner. Maybe they love to live in their kind of environment the way it is.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. I think that's definitely, you got to figure out what you're comfortable with and think like, you can love house sitting and want to go everywhere, but if you're going to get there and not be happy, then there's no point, I don't think.
Do you see that you have, apart from like the duties of taking care of the pet? Now, I would expect that a lot of people don't expect you to be in the house 24 hours a day. Do you find that when you pet sit, you still have time to see a little bit of the place that you're in so you can appreciate the beauty as well as the house that you're sitting in?
Yeah, definitely. Like there are some house sits I've seen out there where the homeowner kind of asks you to be there a majority of the time, and kind of I'll only apply for ones that kind of seem reasonable. I'm not going to say yes, I'll be there
Hmm.
for I won't leave the animal for more than 3 to 4 hours of time. I feel like that's reasonable for an animal to be left for.
Yeah.
And then that gives you enough time to go on day trips, kind of experience a local area.
Hmm.
And like when we're in Europe, we kind of gave ourselves a week between each house sit, and that's the time we'd spend exploring because we had a camper van, and we
Ah,
explore in that kind of week between. But you can see so much in a day trip, especially when you want to kind of learn about an area more.
very true.
It makes it a lot easier because you have time to kind of plan your day, and you can speak to the homeowner and ask where they would suggest seeing.
Uh-huh. That's actually fantastic. That's a fantastic idea because I've seen people go from house sit to house sit to house sit. And then they sort of complain sometimes that they don't have enough time to see everything. But I actually like the idea of giving yourself a day or two in between the seats so that you can
Hmm.
actually get to know the place a little bit better. What a great idea.
Yeah,
Huh.
we found that really nice.
I think that's going forward. That's that's what everybody should do. Just set a little bit of money aside, and so that you can actually take care of yourself too. Now,
Definitely.
when you go on a sit, you know, I assume it's okay to use the things that people leave in their houses. Butter and the staples and things like that. Do you find that you have, if you sit someplace that's really far away from the town, for instance, do you get left cars or are you expected to find your own transportation? Because some people live like you've mentioned like the niche rural farms where you're way far away from the thing and there's not even a bus that goes outside. What happens in those instances? Have you ever been in one of those?
That's something I always ask up front. Only one instance that we've been offered a car, but we've always done house sits and made sure we had access to transport. When we house sat in Europe, we had our camper van, so that made it easy to get around.
Hmm.
And otherwise, we've always kind of been in a place where it was easy to get to shops and local
Hmm.
places. But I think that, it's one of those things again, you kind of have to ask all the
Yeah.
questions. You have to make sure that you are going to be able to access places.
Yeah, I was really shocked. In the group, somebody was mentioning how the sit turned out to be so far away, and it was like a 50 euro cab ride to get into the to
Oh.
And so she's like, first I was stuck in the house, and then I had to do it like twice, and they didn't reimburse me and all that. But my thing was like, yeah, you need to do your due diligence. You can't be blindsided by the fact that, yeah, I'm going to Italy. But if you're going to Italy in some bumfuck place that nobody ever heard of, that's not even close to anything, then it sort of negates the whole thing because you don't see anything but the house that you're in. And that's questions you need to ask. If it comes with cars and, just bicycles, even anything.
Yep, definitely.
Now, you've loved doing this obviously for 5 years. Is it something that you plan on doing for a long time?
I think it's something I plan on doing more part time now. I during lockdown I was in Melbourne.
Hmm.
So I did there was periods during lockdown that everyone in Australia was able to travel, and then there was other times where we couldn't. So I ended up renting.
Hmm.
So I think now I will house sit when I want to go away.
Okay.
I'm looking to go to Mexico next year. So I'm hoping I could house sit there, but it is something I can see myself doing long term.
Hmm.
But it is hard. It was hard to do full time during COVID, and then going forward, it's been a bit tougher.
Yeah. I think COVID really made everybody prioritize a few things, and things you never thought about. But who would have ever thought that some little virus was going to disrupt the whole world as it is, and still have repercussions that are still going on 2 years down the line, and will probably go on for a long time. And so, when you do something like this, it's really important that you do your due diligence and look up where you're going to. How's the travel over there? um, I know recently there was a pet sitter who had had trouble and was denied entrance into the U.S. because pet sitting was considered a job and all those things. So you need to like make sure that you check everything before you embark on that, because you're going to be disappointed. The homeowner is going to be disappointed, and you just need to watch out for things like that.
Yeah, that one. I think that could be tough. The US are quite tough on their kind of visa entry laws and that. And I have never actually house sat in the US, so it's hard to comment on that
Hmm.
one. But I think when we headed to Europe, we were going on a holiday, as we said, and we had the camper van. So I think that we were more going on a holiday and then house sitting on the side as we went.
Exactly. That's great. Now, before we wrap up, can you tell us what your website is again so people can check this out if they want to get into the house and pet sitting business?
Yep. So it's the travelinghousesitters.com. So it's traveling with two L's. And then we also have a Facebook group. We've almost got about 10,000 people in there. We've got homeowners, we've got house sitters who are just starting out, and then we have house sitters who have been doing it for 10, 15 years, way longer than me. So there is just so much information in there. It astounds me the kind of conversations that go on. I'm learning so much from them, and I see kind of what's happening every day.
Yeah.
So if you want to join that group, I can give you the link for the community, and if you want to give it to put it in the show notes.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, Britt. Any last advice you would like to give to anybody who's thinking about getting into this?
I think my main advice is start now. Ask your friends and family if they need a house sitter or if they need someone to walk their dogs, because those references will just be so handy going forward.
That's great. Okay. Thank you so much, Britt. It's been wonderful talking to you. And everyone, please check out.
Travelinghousesitters.com.
Good luck with everything. And hopefully you'll be back in Europe one of these days. And
Love other because you're in Spain, aren't you? Yes, I would love to.
we'll talk to you later. Everyone, thank you for joining me on this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.